Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Glad you could join me. Very interesting discussion to take place this week on the show. I'll have the president of the National Shoot to Retrieve Association, Bill Sumpter, will be joining me in just a few minutes to talk about that organization, but also about all the things that he has learned hunting, training dogs for all sorts of field trial and hunt tests, and of course all the things we can learn as a result of that. His experience is invaluable, and I'm looking forward to having an in-depth discussion with him. Our Handle It training segment is back, and we will talk about, how to fuel your dog in the field. What I'm using these days to do that seemed to work for me and maybe for you as well. I'll give you the rationale behind that. And on Facebook, speaking of that sort of thing, I talked earlier in the month about whether you feed or not in the morning of a hunt and why. And so we'll get your feedback on all of that. I think you'll find some of those comments quite interesting. It's all made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TruLock Choke Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, and find birdhuntingspots.com. Well, a recent chucker hunt. By the way, thank you, Mark, for taking me to that spot. Chucker hunt we did, somewhere in north central Oregon. Just had a day, had to get up above the fog line to see anything from running dogs to flying birds, but had a great time, incredible habitat and lots of birds. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time almost every time. Luckily, Mark and Brian were not. So when they were on the top of the hill, I was on the bottom of the hill. When they were already across the fence, I was rolling under it. Whatever it was, including that, the first point of the day was flicks. Beautiful. Hook around, come back upwind toward us, hold that point. As Brian is walking towards him, I'm still crawling under the fence, and there go the birds. That's how the day went to a great degree, except for one time. We got 2 of the 3 dogs out. They were already working while Flick was still in the truck looking at us. Setter goes on point. Birds get up. One comes straight over like one of those driven pheasant shoots in England. I hit it good and hard, I thought. It crashes into the giant high-tension power lines that go through this place. Helicopters down to ground and ends up on an old dirt road. I know he's good and dead, so I'm going to help Brian put Flick on that next bird. We're looking for Brian's downed bird, which we never did find. But, of course, in the tradition of all, no good deed goes unpunished. Before I could send Flick for my dead bird, it squeaked to life and flew off. Ever had a day like that? It was still incredible. I didn't bring much home, but I sure had a great time. Incredible hunting. Thanks again, Mark. Speaking of hunting, on Facebook recently I asked you for a bunch of reasons, always open to your suggestions. Do you feed your dog the morning of a hunt? And the consensus is probably not. Want an empty gut? There's a whole bunch of performance reasons for that. There's also the risk of a bloat or stomach twist or whatever you want to call it. So those are the basic arguments against it. Chris Mokler points out that the value of food fed in the morning is really not available to the dog while hunting that day. Good idea, and glad you brought it up. Everybody seems to be feeding once a day in the afternoon or evening of a hunt. Lance says Weimaraners in particular are susceptible to bloat issues. That's a good enough reason for me. Yeah. I like this idea. Tony Hill says I give them a little protein and carbohydrates based on replenishing them a bit soon after the hunt. a few hours later, regular evening feeding. And I get it. There's a lot of people who argue that you really shouldn't put a lot of food into a dog's stomach right after hunt either. I'm even being a little cautious about how much water I let Flick take in at the end of a hunt. I mean, immediately after a hunt. James Inbody points out that if you feed in the evening, the dog has enough time to digest the food, process it before the morning hunt. Mike LaRoe will give a handful. Makes a difference, he says. And somebody else down the road also mentioned a hypoglycemic dog that probably needs a little bit of help there. We'll talk more about all of those things, and particularly the idea of how much volume in a stomach during a hunt is issue. So stick around for that coming up in the Handle It segment. In the meanwhile, let's get to it here. We're brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. If you're a turkey guy too, I don't know, I'll never sit still for that stuff. But if you're a turkey hunter, make sure you stop by the Trulock Chokes booth at the National Wild Turkey Federation gathering February 15th through 19th. Lots of show specials there. And I'll bet they'll talk about them on their website as well. So take a look. There's always something to provide motivation for you to upgrade your choke situation and improve your shooting. It's all at TrulockChokes.com. And take good care of your whole gun with sageandbreaker.com. Gun cleaning and gun care gear. Now there's a faster checkout system with one-touch PayPal, so if you're doing it that way, it's real simple. And believe me, simple is better. Heirloom quality goods for cleaning and taking care of your shotgun. It's all at sageandbreaker.com. Well, it's about time. Gosh dang it, I'll never forget my first NSTRA trial. I didn't end up last, and neither did my dog, although any mistakes were operator error, not his fault. But it's good to finally talk with the president of the National Shoot to Retrieve Association. Bill Sumpter joins me. Bill, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
The organization, frankly, has a pretty low profile, and I understand that. I know guys who are just fanatic. They're dedicated members. They do all they can to help out, and they're very active. But why don't you just acquaint us with the organization just a little bit? Tell us what your goals are.
Well, the National Shoot to Retrieve, and I will probably shorten it to NSTRA.
Sure.
NSTRA in talking, but we were formed in the late 60s by a group of sportsmen that wanted to prolong the hunting season, create better bird dogs, and currently we have 1,600 members all across the U.S., 2 regions in Canada. We put on about 800 trials a year throughout the country. And our goals are to improve the pointing dog breeds, be better, bird finders, look better on point, retrieving. So that's and we're always looking for new members. Most of NSTRA, like a lot of organizations, are getting old. So
hey, careful.
yeah. Well, I'm right there. That's kind of our goal, is to improve bird dogs and increase membership.
Well, the thing that really caught me, and this is why I got involved back probably on my first or second wire hair, was it is a way to extend the hunting season. Yes, it's not hunting, but it's really close to hunting. And so anybody who lives for bird dogs and bird hunting might be able to see something valuable in that. And just so that we have it covered, if you want to learn more, you'll go to NSTRA.org, NSTRA.org. Well, tell me about your own dogs. So what are you running these days?
Oh, I've got 2 Brittany's and 2 English setters.
Ooh, I'm just looking at all the hair that you got to pick through at the end of a day, but that's your choice. You're a big boy.
There is a bunch. There is a bunch. But no, I enjoyed both of them. Well, I like all breeds actually, but pointers are a little too high powered for me. And I just settled on Brittany's and setters. You talked about extending the hunting season and so forth, and most of the people that get into NSTRA get in with a hunting dog. That's what I did, and obviously it wasn't broke to what you needed to go far in NSTRA, but that's how we all get into it, because we love our hunting, we love our bird dogs, and they hooked me right away, because my first run I had 4 birds, so I thought this is pretty easy. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, when I used to teach fly fishing, I'd always send the beginners to a really bad spot, because I didn't want them to catch a fish on the first cast, or they'd never let me forget it. They were the experts already. So
Right.
4 birds in one run, that's pretty incredible, isn't it? I mean, give us a feel for that. What is the basis? What's the format for a NSTRA trial?
Sure. A full trial consists of 16 braces. Fields are typically around 40 acres, plus or minus. The handler, both handlers, you have 2 handlers, and they're in the blinds, while a bird planter puts 5 birds out in the field, out in that 40-acre field. Each dog has a judge, and you run a brace for 30 minutes. So you are judged on by score on the fines, each fine that you have from 0 to 100, and then you have to flush the bird. The dog has to remain steady until you flush it. Then you shoot the bird, hopefully, and you get scored 0 to 100 on a retrieve. You're scored 0 to 100 on ground coverage, and then 0 to 75 on obedience. And then if a dog is an area where he sees another dog on point, you get scored on a back 0 to 75. So at the end of the day, on that field, you would have 32 dogs with scores. So unless there are extra birds left over from the brace before, you start off with 5 birds. So 4 is pretty good.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if I remember, I actually got asked to gun, I think, on either a test of a dog retrieving or backing. You do some sort of end of day qualifying sometimes, don't you?
No, only after the brace is over. The only thing that you would do if you have all safeties.
Yeah.
In other words, they either flew towards the judge, didn't just over the dog's head, towards the gallery, whatever. You had to call a safety. Then a handler would have to throw a bird at the end of the brace and for a scored retrieve that would apply to all those safeties.
Got it. Okay. Another organization, another day.
Yep. That's
well,
right.
Why they'd ever ask me to gun is beyond me, but maybe they ran. I had ammo and nobody else did.
There you go.
You know, again, like I said in the introduction, it was when I went back and looked at the scores and realized We didn't completely and totally suck. I was relieved. And there is something for everybody. You alluded to something that I truly believe in and I advocate whenever I can, and that is preparing for NSTRA or a NAVHDA test or even an AKC or an American Field Hunt test or a field trial. Preparing for all that makes for a better hunting dog no matter what, doesn't it?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, like I said, they need to be steady on the flush, your retrieves. They need to be two-hand in order to get scored. And without training, there's very few dogs that they're bred for, and they all have the instinct, but there's very few that do that clean and with style.
Yeah.
Without training.
So the training really is what wins a NSTRA trial. That's
what separates the excellent the excellent handlers from you're just mediocre handlers is the time that you have to spend with your dogs. Now we started an amateur program. I don't know what that would be 5 years ago. So now most of the trials they're run what we call open combined trials. So if your dog is the first time, or he could be in there several times, but as long as he doesn't have more than 6 open points, he can run as an amateur. And in an amateur open combined, if that dog ends up winning the field, he gets both amateur and open points. But if he doesn't, then he's competing with those amateur dogs for placements.
Sure.
So we have made some progress with young dogs, with new people getting into it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I remember. I've been to all of them and run at least one of everything, just so that I can lie about it later. But one thing I realize about NSTRA, like some other organizations, is it's very welcoming to the first timer. You don't have to be a pro trainer.
No.
You don't have to have a dog with with those what names I mean behind it. You can just show up with your bird dog and have a good time.
Right, and like I said, that's what most people do, and then they realize, that if they're going to compete, at a regional level or a national level, they need to, put more time in, put more training in. And another thing that NSTRA does is we have a mentor program. So for the first 8 times that you go out to run, you can have a mentor walk with you and talk with you during the brace. So he can explain, where you might go and why you shouldn't go here because your brace mate just got that bird or so we're just trying to help the transition to becoming a NSTRA handler.
That is incredible, and good job. Whoever thought that one up deserves a gold medal. That's incredible. One of the most intimidating aspects of this, and I'll go back to my first NAVHDA hunt test, was not having been to one before, which was the dumbest thing I ever did, just to watch. But not knowing how to act, the protocol, the etiquette, all those things. If we had somebody taking us by the hand, we'd probably become a better field trialer fairly quickly.
Much quicker than if you were trying to learn it on your own. I mean, it's pretty easy from the gallery to run a brace.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole lot different when you're out there in the field.
All alone.
And you hear your brace mate shooting, and it's it's different. So
Now, you mentioned the gallery and you mentioned the judges. And again, this is a lot of dogs ago when I was at my last NSTRA trial. Are the judges a horseback?
no.
They're not.
Well, I say no. 90% of them are, but
Okay.
like in Arizona, they run on state ground, and the state doesn't allow them to run ATVs.
Okay.
So in Arizona they have to be on horseback, and there's a few other places around the country, but most of them, the judges and the bird handler are done all off ATVs.
Okay. Okay. So one thing we might acquaint our dogs with is a motorized vehicle sharing the field.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
A motorized vehicle, and then certainly running with another brace mate, practicing with them, that where the guy's screaming and your dog is not used to all of that noise.
Yeah.
That's different. Those things are, because I don't get to train there as much as I'd like, but when I do, I run with a couple other club members, so that you're used to all those things. Try to have a judge that's following you around the field, and like I said, against a brace mate, of course, you can get a back and train on backing and so forth.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, beyond the practical aspects of that, who doesn't like training alongside somebody else once in a while? I learn something every time I go out and work with somebody.
Yeah. Well, I think we all like, hunting by ourselves on occasion, but it's also enjoyable to share and get their input on how to correct a dog if he's doing something wrong, whether it be retrieve or fines or backing. I certainly enjoy. I do work by myself, but when I'm able, I get with the other club members, and typically, like, when the weather's good. I'm in Iowa, so it's not real good right now. But when the weather's good, typically on Sunday there'll be half a dozen people down there at the club, working dogs, and so they get used to all of that noise and commotion that's going on.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're just getting warmed up, everybody. We're going to talk more with Bill Sumpter of the National Shoot to Retrieve Association. NSTRA.org is how you learn more, including where your nearest chapter is, where the events are being held, the other things that take place there. Then we're going to talk more bird hunting and dog training, a lot of that coming up on the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. We'll also cover that Handle It segment, talk about how fat is what fuels a dog's performance in the field. So stick around. Bill, same for you. Hang tight for just a moment. We'll be right back to you after this brief commercial message. Yeah, we are brought to you by MidwayUSA.com. They carry just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Their bird hunting and dog training selection is expanding by the day. I know, I'm nagging them every day to add more and more stuff, and they're doing it. So check it all out at MidwayUSA.com. They got 20,000 products that will ship free, everything from GPS to boots. Competitive pricing, and by the way, if you're looking for ammo, these guys have it. I just got another shipment of target rounds for my 28 gauge. Don't ask why I need more target rounds. You know why. Anyway, I personally know Larry Potterfield. He's a role model for all of us, supporting our sports and the Second Amendment. Learn more about the organization and their products at MidwayUSA.com. And welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Bill Sumpter, the president of the National Shoot to Receive. Yeah, I got retrieving on the mind. The National Shoot to Retrieve Association, where the handlers often receive birds from their dogs. Am I right on that, Bill?
Oh, that is absolutely correct. More the better.
they better is right. Well, let's get back to your dogs for a minute. I guess in a way, an interesting combination, Brits and setters. How'd you settle on them?
Well, I had Brittany's, and that's what I started with, National Shoot to Retrieve. But as I got into it longer, and then judged, looking at those pointers and setters on point with a 12 o'clock tail and the head up, that's just pretty hard to beat. So I ended up getting setters. I think I'll always have Brittany's, but I think I'll always have setters too, just because of how they look. That gets me.
Yeah.
Slam a point, and they got a 12 o'clock tail, and it's a short hair, a Brittany. Wire hair, they can do everything just the same or better. But when you're just standing there looking at that dog on point, that's pretty. And when they're running across the field with ground coverage and their tails cracking and it's up. My first setter, watching her hunt, she'd cover 3 times the ground as my Brittany, and he'd find twice the bird, and I'd still rather watch her run.
Oh man, the goose pimples are all over me after that description. It's so true, isn't it?
I mean, and I like I said, I just haven't ever had a short hair, but they find birds, and some of them look great, but it's just not like a pointer or a setter standing there on point.
You ever?
That's how I got the mix.
I understand completely. I would only add one thing. We got lucky one TV shoot, and Tad, one of my camera guys, got a setter backlit, sun behind him, silhouetted. It was like the dog was glowing. Yeah,
and you see that feathering and the tail, in the breeze. That's why I got them. And I judge a lot, simply because every organization needs judges. But when you're out there on the bike and you're judging, you don't me, and I don't think any judges is out there to see the bad work. You're out to see that dog that's running Mach 10, swaps in, and it looks like $1 million. That's what the organization wants to breed in, and that's personally why I judge. I mean, I've been known to, when a dog does that, go, wow, just out of response, because that's why you sit there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because as a judge, you probably see things, and this is how we're going to start talking about hunting and training too. You're out there judging dogs. What are some of the things that you see handlers and dogs do that probably is the most common in the way of, I'll call them mistakes, just because I don't know what else to call them right off.
Right. Well, handlers, in the game, and I'm sure it's probably true hunting too, but they tend to, a dog has not moved. He's staunch on point. He's intense. And they hunt, can't find the bird, and then they relocate him. And then they can't find him, they relocate him again. and he may take a couple steps, whatever. Well, by the end, he's looking right down at that bird, and that creates problems in the future.
Yeah.
That dog thinks he needs to walk up on that bird, and I think that's probably the most common with young handlers. You see experienced handlers. As long as that dog's intense and he's not looking around, he's focused, they're going to stay there, and they know their dog, and they know that bird's there. It's their job to find it.
Yeah, you make an interesting point. I catch myself doing this every once in a while. I keep thinking, much like anybody else you just described, the bird is not within 5 yards of where you thought it was, so you give up, when you ought to go out 35 yards, because sometimes that's how far away the bird is from the dog, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Now, in our situation, I mean, that happens some, but typically what I was describing happens like when we have heavy cover.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hot, and it's these birds are pen race birds, and they're put down in the field, and it's hot. They'll bury in, and handlers have a tough time finding them, and they may be within 5 yards, and the dog knows it.
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't want to move, but the handler is thinking he false pointed, and so he's wanting to get on around the field. And that's kind of the one of the main problems that I see.
Well, so that really is operator error. That's one where we got basically a lazy handler, isn't it?
Well, yeah, lazy or
naive. Yeah,
just inexperienced,
yeah.
and not being able to read his dogs. Like I said, you're experienced handlers, you're good handlers. They can read their dogs, and if their dog isn't moving and is intense, they know that bird's there. Now, if he's ticking when he started to point, or he looks around, after he's flushed for a while, he knows that bird isn't there.
Yeah.
Based on what the dog is telling him.
So you're in Iowa. I would presume that's where you hunt when you're going out and hunting for fun. What?
Yeah, there in Montana, and Kansas when I can. Yeah.
Well, good. So that gives me a good choice in three of my favorite states. What do you like to chase when you're in those other states?
Well, my favorite are Huns.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite. When I've gone out to Montana, and I don't know, I guess probably 13 years in a row that I've went out there, but we always go before pheasant season.
Yeah.
So we're just chasing the prairie birds.
Yeah.
And sharptail grouse are nice. They're okay. But Huns are like quail on steroids, man. They'll hold for you once you get them up, and a time or two they'll hold tight. They fly hard, and they're not like sharptail where they may get up and fly a mile, and so you got to chase them for a mile to get that group back up again. So. And then, of course, Kansas quail.
Yeah.
Now in Iowa, we don't. Southern Iowa has a huntable quail population, but it's not great.
Yeah.
So I do hunt, pheasants, but it's pheasant hunting with pointing dogs in the tall cover. You can't see the dog as much,
Mm-hmm.
and which is why I like Kansas and Montana, because you can see your dogs. I mean, that's why I got them, to watch what they do, their work. And pheasants, they run, so they can create some bad habits.
Oh, I can't agree more. I tell everybody, if you really want to be a pheasant hunter, get a flushing dog.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
and that's one thing that I didn't mention, that National Shoot to Retrieve is for pointing dogs.
yeah, yeah,
We, we don't have a flushing dog category. So
so what about a pointing lab?
no, no. That's, nice try though, but but no.
And no offense if you're listening and you own a pointing lab, God
No,
bless you. Yeah.
no, but that's just not one of
Yeah,
the pointing breeds
I get it. Yeah.
that we no, I've hunted behind pointing labs, and they're, they have, you got the best of both worlds for pheasants.
Yeah, exactly.
In tall cover.
Let's go back to Huns because the last 4 seasons I've seen more Huns than I saw in the last 30 years of my hunting career. Have you noticed an uptick in the populations where you go?
No, and that's partly my fault because I didn't get to do much this year. Now the people that I
Yeah.
went with, they did, but we have a national trial out there, have had for the last 4 years in Lewistown, and no, with my responsibilities, I had to get back, so I only got to on a couple days, so I didn't experience it. Plus, it was 100 degrees, in the 90s.
Yeah.
During the trial and the week after. But I had some friends that stayed another 3 weeks, and they had a really good hunt.
I think one year I was out there right after one of your trials. I spent significant time in Lewistown, and I think we were right. Is that late summer, early fall, sometime?
Yes, it's Labor Day.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the week after Labor Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last 4 years, it's been at the Hooterite Colony.
Oh yeah.
The King Colony. They're west of town.
Nice.
They're very gracious hosts.
Oh yeah. Best pie in town, by the way.
Well, they can cook. But yeah, like the first day of the trial, it was 103.
Oh my God. Okay, so now that we're on that topic, we are coming back to Huns again, I promise. But what do you do, whether it's a trial or a hunt? I mean, if it was a hunting day, I'd just call it. I'd go back down to town and sample the new brewery. But if you got to run a dog in a trial and it's 100 degrees, what are you going to do?
Well, what you're going to do, they have to have a minimum of 3 water buckets in every field.
Yeah.
And so you're going to make sure that whether he wants to or not, gets in that water to cool him off.
Yeah.
He can't run for 30 minutes. And these dogs run. I mean, they are athletes. So you've got to get them. You got to get them water. A lot of people carry water. If it's really hot, I do. But otherwise, I just make sure that they're getting in those water tubs as you go past them to cool off.
You ever, is there a telltale, pardon the pun, you're a judge, you see this all the time. What's the most obvious indication of an overheated dog?
Their tongue dragging on the ground.
Yeah.
It starts to get blue. I've seen dogs that, have been overheated, had heat exhaustion, and get wobbly in the back end, and I've had to tell the handler that he needs to pick that dog up.
Yeah.
Not because he's doing anything wrong with the rule, but for the dog's sake. The dog was suffering.
Yeah.
But dogs that are, typically they'll pant and they'll have their mouth open, when they get hot. But when their tongue starts getting extended and getting blue, they need to be in some water.
Yeah.
They need to find some water.
Well, good to know. Sharptails versus Huns, I know your preference. Do you see a difference in the habitats?
Oh, definitely. Now you can find them in both.
Yeah.
You can find them in the sage. You can, but certainly Huns like to be around the green fields. In in not much, maybe not much visible cover.
Yeah.
Wheat stubble, which can be hard to get them pinned. But sharptails, they're the only thing about sharptails is when you when the group get busted, you can watch them for a long ways.
Yeah. In fact, South Dakota is a perfect example of that. You can watch a sharptail fly away for 3 days.
Yeah.
That's how flat it is. And if you want to see it fly away for a week, just stand on a tuna fish can.
There you go. There you go.
I kept forgetting until the last day of our season, which was very recent in my memory, because my dog slammed a point in the middle of a cut wheat field. And I had been so dozing that I'd forgotten, oh, well, of course, that's where Huns are going to be when they can be. What the heck are they doing out there in the middle of the day, in the middle of a field like that?
Well, they're eating.
Are they still?
Sure, they're eating because they certainly aren't getting much shade.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of day. When it's warm, the Huns, be under a tree or a bush, into the shade. But I got a lot of vivid memories of watching Huns running right down that wheat stubble.
Yeah,
clear to the other end of the field, and no dogs are going to get them.
Yeah, kind of like a pheasant in corn.
Exactly, that's exactly right.
But you bring up a good point. It was the middle of the day. In fact, it was the end of the day. We were heading back to the truck, but it was 4 degrees. So they were bulking up on the calories.
Sure.
Never got a shot. Watch that bunch fly. Watch the flight of that bunch scare another bunch into the air, and then watch that bunch scare a pair into the air, all 150 yards away. You've never seen that, have you?
That's hunting. That's hunting. It's not harvesting. It's hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was easy, they'd call it shopping. Oh my. Yeah. Well, we train, whether it's for an NSTRA trial or just to go find quail in western Kansas. What are some of the things that you think we should do better at when we're training our dogs for hunting situations?
Well, I think number one is obedience. Yeah. I mean, we can do all the bird work that we want, but whether you're in the field or whether you're in the NSTRA trial, you need an obedient dog. Now, if you're hunting, you have an opportunity to have an e-collar on, and they can help you, but they need to be obedient. They don't need to be. I mean, I like my dogs to run, and I don't care if they're out there 300 yards, whatever, if they're going to hold a point. But if I don't want them to go to an area, they need to listen, or if they need to whoa or heel. I think that's one thing that most everybody, because that's the least fun thing to do.
Yeah,
it's way more fun to put birds out and work on bird work or retrieving than it is obedience.
But you bring up the two things that are most important, and I'm going to narrow it down to one thing because I'm looking at the barbed wire fence that was the subject of a veterinarian visit not a day and a half ago. A dog on point at some point has to understand that that's an obedience situation as well.
Yeah. We have, if you, and I'm related to a trial situation, but it's no different than bird hunting. But you flush the bird and it goes out of bounds, and there's a barbed wire fence there that it's going over. I mean, you need to be able to control that dog not to chase that bird and go through that barbed wire fence. for his safety and, to get on down the field.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, well, like I said, obedience, it's not fun. It's time consuming, but I think it's the most important thing.
Let's leave with one more question. You hunt wild birds out there in the same country I do. In fact, I'm making a promise to everybody listening right now here at the Upland Nation podcast that I will be back in that Lewistown country for sharptail season. I call it sharptail season because that's generally what I find. Maybe we can connect if you're there as well. But Bill Sumpter with the National Shoot to Retrieve Association, if you're out there in the field chasing Huns and you got a dog or two on the ground, what's in your vest that we may not have thought of that we should always carry that you carry?
Well, I don't carry much. I carry side cutters.
Yeah.
In case they get into some kind of a trap.
Yeah.
Or barbed wire. That's probably the one thing that I carry that a lot of people don't. Other than that, if it's hot, a collapsible water container. And then my Garmin.
Yeah.
550 plus.
Yeah. Yeah. It works for me. Works for you. Love it.
That's, I don't know why I carry shells because I can't hit anything anyway, but I usually have a shell or two in there.
I have a friend, God bless him. He's shown me some great places. You all know him. He's been on the podcast. He's a big game hunter, so he carries 2 boxes full of ammo, and it doesn't slow him down one bit. I carry 8. If I get 8 shots in a hunt, I'm a grateful hunter. Bill Sumpter with the National Shoot to Retrieve Association. Pleasure. We'll do it again. If you want to learn more out there about them, NSTRA.org is where you do it. Bill, thanks so much for your insights, your wisdom, and for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It was certainly a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
And we'll be back in just a moment with that Handle It segment. Put the potato chips away. Learn how to fuel your dog correctly in the field. It's all coming up right after this from pointershotguns.com. Yeah, I was at the SHOT Show. Always am. Yeah, despite their best efforts, they can't keep me out. But at the SHOT Show, I got to actually handle the new side-by-side shotgun from pointershotguns.com. It's a sweet shooter. Fit and finish just fine, thank you. It will be available at nearby retailers very soon, so watch out for that. If you want an update on when it will be available, it will be at pointershotguns.com. So check it out. Check out some of my videos and my articles there. Get ready for the new side-by-side.
Handle it.
Flick's last hunt of the season. I'll tell you why it was his last hunt on another podcast. But Flick's last hunt of this season was a 30-mile day. Yeah, he did 30. I did 6, maybe 7, I think, now that I think about it. And I was reminded once again, I mean, the guy was as fresh at the end of the hunt as, it was only a 4-hour hunt, but I was reminded of how important it is to keep our dog fueled. Yeah, keep fuel in the tank all day. Now, we talked earlier about not feeding in the morning, so there the dog's got a deficit. But more importantly than that, it's about all the things that you want a dog to do, just like your vehicle. You got to keep the fuel flowing. My fear, like many of you, is the stomach twist, but it also, a full belly slows a dog down. It impacts their performance in many ways. So what do you do in the middle of the day? And then thank you, Bruno, for asking me that again. And here's the answer. You find something that has low volume and high fat. Because, unlike humans who can survive a day on simple carbohydrates, a dog needs fat. That's what they processed best during the day of a hunt. So if you want a dog to have instant energy, just like you can slam down a Monster or a 5-hour energy drink, dogs need fat. So you want something with a lot of fat and not much volume. Okay, here's what I've settled on. Egg yolks. No, don't cup your hands or put them in your vest pocket. Get some of those little squeeze tubes that moms get for their little kids. It opens up like a Ziploc bag on the top. It's got a screw top on the other end. You put a couple egg yolks in there, squish them around so they're more liquid-like. Keep them in a cool place in your vest. Don't display them to the blazing sun. And then every hour or so, just squeeze out a little bit for the dog, when he's coming back for water or something like that. I've never met a dog that won't eat a raw egg yolk. And yolks are the best. Yeah, you can mix it with the white, but the white is mainly protein and the yolk is mainly fat. I think the last time I looked it was like 90% fat. I'm disgusted. The dogs are ecstatic. Egg yolks for instant energy in the field. Try it sometime. Okay, so we are brought to you in part by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Yeah, they are there for you when it comes to new gear as well. Brand new Negrini cases just for bird hunters. Yeah, they finally did it. They finally created a case just for guys like us. Beautiful detailing, made in Italy, of course. Some blaze orange, so everybody knows you're one of us. Functional, lightweight, airline approved. MidValleyClays.com is where you browse the entire Negrini case line. MidValleyClays.com. Thanks. If you commented at the social platforms, I wish I could read them all out loud, but you can always go to the Wing Shooting USA or the Upland Nation Facebook pages and read all of the wisdom that other people have to bestow upon us, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much. I'm also very thankful for the kind ratings and reviews you're leaving these days. That's how we grow. Somebody looks at that and says, 5 stars, I better give it a try. So keep up the good work in that regard. I'm also thankful to our sponsors, Sage and Breaker, Pointer Shotgun, Mid-Valley Clays, Midway USA, and True Lock Chokes. So if you are buying something that they sell, please tell them I sent you. It's how we stay alive right here in the podcast world. Most importantly, it's all about you. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Scott Linden. See you next week on the Upland Nation Podcast.